We strive to conduct our deliberations impartially and base our decisions on factual evidence and objective analysis.
The FX markets have certainly reflected an increased belief that the Fed, no doubt supported by the new US President Donald Trump, are more likely to raise interest rates on this month. Alastair McCaig, Fern Wealth. One of the most influential data releases this week is US NFP on Friday. Markets are factoring in a March interest rate rise from the Federal Reserve. So, Alastair, could disappointing NFP figures be influential enough to impact a March rate hike?
I think when it comes to the non-farm payroll data releases out from the US of late, and certainly in the last 12 months or so, they have been unlikely to prevent the Fed from continuing with whatever interest rate policies they might have. I think only an exceptionally poor set of data would be enough. And interestingly enough, it's not necessarily the headline non-farm employment changes that is likely to be the catalyst. More likely would be the average hourly earnings on a monthly basis. If they were to be particularly weak, I think that might be more likely to have an effect. That being said, if we look at the FX markets and the expectations for a March interest rate rise materializing from the Fed, that has jumped in little over a week from about 22% expectations of a rate rise up to the mid-80s at the tail end of last week. And the FX markets have certainly reflected an increased belief that the Fed, no doubt supported by the new U.S. President Donald Trump, are more likely than not to raise rates later on this month.
The ECB meeting this week is expected to bring no key changes to the ECB QE programme. Is Brexit risk the real euro driver this week?
I think when it comes to the European Central Bank's meetings, we're not expecting any major surprises to come out of them. The biggest interest, certainly as far as equity and FX markets and bond markets as well, for that matter, will be the Q&A session with ECB President Mario Draghi. Interestingly enough, one of the key aspects when this quantitative easing scheme was put in place was obviously the facilitation of cash via the banks to the business environment and community. Subsequently, we found that the equity markets in Europe and more broadly globally have been arguably the major beneficiaries from all of this extra cash. And it might be a question that they're looking at from market stability point of view, whether they feel that there is any room for flexibility in regards to changing this current quantitative easing scheme. There is undoubtedly going to be questions over the politics of Europe as well. And at the moment, we are seeing the French political landscape being analyzed most extensively. Similarities in France as to quite a few countries around the world, in so much as the contentedness of voters with what is the current government and the way that governments are running the country is under some real pressure. And the desire for change is very evident, not just in France, but around Europe. Whether that would necessarily extend to the likes of Marine Le Pen, of course, is a much bigger question. And I think that the French political scene is probably more armed and prepared for voter discontent than the likes of, say, the UK and Brexit and the US in the run-up to the US elections.
Finally, the yen has recorded gains on the back of Korea tensions. So do you expect geopolitical tensions to be the main driver among currency pairs this week?
I think that currency wars for a long time had been the comments that many had looked at with driving interest rates lower and arguably trying to improve the attractiveness of currencies. With the playing field being so level and interest rates being broadly speaking, flat, or in a few instances, and the yen in case, being negative, that battle scene has been a little bit less easily achieved. And I think there's been a migration into corporate tax seems to be one of the driving forces and certainly the major debating issues at the moment as to which regions will become most attractive. I think in the Asian area, there are a number of issues at play. Obviously, the fact that the US President Donald Trump made one of the first acts of his new presidency, the confirmation of the US withdrawal from the TPP agreement certainly strengthened the hands of the likes of, say, China, but with the escalation of North and South Korean tensions building, we've also seen the Japanese yen react on the back of that. Worth noting, of course, that the move in dollar yen, if we use that as the barometer, from mid-June 2016 up to basically the tail end of 2017, saw almost 20% jump in dollar yen. We've given back about 6% of that in the last month and a half, almost 2 months. It'll be interesting to see how much more support there is looking at that 112 level being a key region.
Alastair, thank you for your insights. That's all from me, but for all the latest updates and exclusive market moves, do keep clicking back to Dugoscopy TV.